Here we are, the Dynasty Roundtable podcast, YouTube show. Don't forget to click like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And go check out the podcast, by the way. Podcast numbers are going up. Thank you so much for downloading that. And and if you give us a review, that helps out even more. Getting the plugs out of the way at the top because we have a banger of a show. And
Absolutely.
it's gonna be quick hitting. It's gonna be in your face. These are the players that we are stashing at the end of our rookie drafts, and I don't want to waste any time. Because I want to talk about a player that we were disappointed that he didn't go on day 2 or early day 3, but then once the landing spot was once he got his landing spot with the Kansas City Chiefs in round 7, I thought just when you think you couldn't have done and messed up any I'm messing up this quote from the Dumb and Dumber really
You are.
badly.
Dude,
Just
that's so
when
crazy. I had that quote in the back of my mind. He totally redeemed himself, Seth.
That's right. He totally redeemed himself with the Kansas City Chiefs. And as we mentioned, Brashard Smith, he transitioned from wide receiver to running back this year. Sound familiar? We've been saying Tyrone Tracy all off season long. And kudos to you. It was Matt Babich who brought him up to me when we first started this process, clear back in November, December. He has a great athletic profile. He produced in college. I mean, for a player who was his first year as a running back to produce the way he did, over 1,300 rushing yards, 39 receptions as a running back. You can't tell me that Kansas City isn't going to have a plan for this guy. And then you go to PFF and you ask yourself, okay, is what I'm watching on film, does it match up with PFF? It's one of my favorite things to do. And sure enough, it does. 91 overall offensive grade, 87.1 rushing grade, 26th amongst all FBS running backs. And the most important part for fantasy, 91.9 receiving grade, number 2 amongst all FBS running backs. And then you look at the depth chart. There's a pathway for him to see the field right away. I mean, Pacheco's coming off an injury, and then after him, it's Kareem Hunt and Elijah Mitchell. I love if he's sitting there in round 4 of my drafts, I'm not letting him go undrafted. I'm scooping up Brashard Smith everywhere. What say you?
He's clearly, one of my favorite backs in this process, just from where I had him ranked, back in November and talking about him. And yeah, this was always my fear, as we got closer and, we had guests like John Laub on and Derek Brown, and we got to kind of talk about these prospects and maybe some of their shortcomings. And, I realized I had this sinking feeling, he's not going to get the draft capital that I want. And being lighter than Tracy, Tracy being, a 200-pound guy is what helped him be a 5th round pick. Brashard Smith being on the lighter side. But then you look at the Chiefs draft, they only had 7 picks, and 4 of them were in the top 3 rounds. So we knew, Brashard Smith wasn't going to be a day 2 prospect. And they take Jalen Royals. I believe they took a linebacker in the 5th or 7th round, or 5th or 6th round, and then in the 7th, they took Brashard Smith. And I might be making this up, but did they trade for him? They trade up for him?
I don't recall. I can look it up though as you're
I
talking.
think okay, don't quote me on it. We don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but I think they may have traded up with the Patriots, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But
I
you look at
think you're
this.
right. I think you're right because the reason I know this is because the Bears also had them or had Brashard Smith. He was like a 30 visit, and the rumors were the Bears were really into Brashard Smith too. And I think the Chiefs got ahead of the Bears to take him. So I think you are right about that. But
Okay,
I'm
so
looking it
here
up
I have
now.
an article up. It says we had him higher on our board than when we took him, Chiefs Director of Player Personnel. Quote, that's when you start to consider trading, when a guy is there that you have higher on your board, and what we would give up is peanuts compared to what we think we'll get. Our coaches are super excited about the kid, and they will find ways to get the kid on the field, whether it's in a 3rd down role and an all down role, whatever they decide the kid will play. So there's a lot of, obviously, as a draft pick to the team, there's going to be a lot of glowing reviews, but this is the type of talk that means they see the talent that we saw in Brashard Smith, absolutely worth a stash at his current draft cost.
Yeah, and this article from ESPN was titled "Why the Chiefs Traded Up for Brashard Smith." So yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, they did
Okay.
trade up for him. Anyway,
I'm making up for forgetting Tyler Conklin and all my other mistakes of the past couple episodes by pulling that one out of
yeah,
my butt. But my first stash is going to be a little higher up on your fantasy draft boards, but a fourth round guy who I believe could very well end up being worth a second round rookie pick in future years, because Woody Marks in round 5, right behind Joe Mixon in Houston. This back from USC. Listen, I didn't really know who he was, to be honest with you, going into this draft cycle. Wasn't very familiar, but I went on apps like Fast Draft or went on Keep Trade Cut and just seeing, consensus rankings, and he was someone who was very high on the board. So it forced me to try and figure out who this guy was. And he's kind of built for an NFL role. I don't think he's necessarily bell cow material by any means, but playing right behind a 29-year-old running back in Joe Mixon, 28. He's got to be right around there in terms of age. But we look at his injury history, and Mixon has maybe one full season in his career. So we're looking at, most likely, based on history, 2 to 3 games this year where Woody Marks is a starting running back, or at least getting some significant work. You take a look at the depth chart, there's not a lot there. He's going to be a 4th round rookie pick. In sharp leagues, he's getting taken in the 3rd round. I've seen him as a late 3rd round pick in a sharp league that I'm in. But in the average league, you can get him in the 4th round, stash him on your taxi squad, and maybe even get a real nice profit if you have a contending team with Joe Mixon and he goes down mid-season.
yeah. To your point, Joe Mixon, 28, going to be 29 by the time the season starts.
There we go. Yep.
And you're absolutely right about the depth chart. There's not much behind him. I mean, Dameon Pierce. Um, I just dropped him in a league where I was making room for some of my rookies. I didn't really want to, but Daria Gumbawale is another name that's there, but there's no reason why Woody Marks can't beat out those guys. And like you said, this is an offense we want exposure to. That's a perfect name to take there. I'm fine, and I'm fine with taking him in the late 3rd round, early 4th round. I think that's a really good spot to take him in your rookie drafts. The next name that I'm going to bring up is pretty much another name in that similar vein, and that's Kyle Monangai. He was drafted in round 7 by the Bears. And the profile, like when you look up the profile, it's not as good. But you know who else didn't have a very good profile and turned out to be a pretty damn good running back in a Ben Johnson scheme? That would be David Montgomery. And he kind of gives me David Montgomery light vibes. I don't know if he's going to be as good as David Montgomery, but he was extremely productive in college. At a school where we've seen running backs succeed at the next level before. I believe that's where Isaiah Pacheco went. I could be having a brain fart. 1,200 rushing yards in 2023 and again in 2024. Not a huge pass catcher. That's the one knock, and not great in PFF, to be honest. But the one thing that I think could get him on the field, actually 2 things, he does not fumble the ball. He was number 2 in protecting the football amongst college running backs during the regular season. And the depth chart is absolutely brutal in Chicago. DeAndre Swift, we know that the Lions traded him away. I know Ben Johnson didn't make the trade, but that was a decision I'm sure he was in on as the offensive coordinator. And then Roschon Johnson, who's just been a disappointment to this point, whether it's he can't stay healthy with the concussion or just not being as productive as we thought he could be. So Kyle Monangai has every chance to be at least involved in year one from the ground up. And he's with Ben Johnson, and I saw him. I've seen him go at the 412. I've seen him go undrafted. I've seen him go early in the fourth round, late third at the earliest. So that's somebody I'm definitely. It's worth spending a fourth round rookie pick on.
Absolutely. Totally agree there. With my next, I will stay on theme here with running backs and talk about Jarquez Hunter, who is running back out of Auburn, selected by the Los Angeles Rams. He joins a backfield with Kyron Williams and former second round pick Blake Corum.
Third, I think third.
Third round pick, that makes more sense. But okay,
Yeah.
there we go. Messing up history again. But Hunter, selected in the fourth round. He's a home run hitting running back who's, for 200 pounds, under 5'10. It's a pretty solid BMI. He's a stout guy, but he's also got 81st percentile speed. And not the best production profile out of Auburn in terms of the stats, but when you watch the film, he is a pretty natural runner. There, is some rigidness to his side to side, but you look at the opportunity and the situation that he's in Los Angeles, a team that loves to pound the rock, and you ask yourself, do the Brian Windhorst meme, if you've ever seen it. Now, why would they do this? Draft after you got Kyron Williams, who's a bell cow. They draft a third round pick in Corum and hardly ever use him. And then they spend a fourth round pick on Jarquez Hunter. Why could that be, Seth? Maybe it is because a certain Kyron Williams is an unrestricted free agent after this season. Now, the Rams are not necessarily in a spot where they can pay Kyron Williams a lot of money coming off of what I believe is his rookie contract. So is this a sign that maybe there's some at least open competition here for Jarquez Hunter and Blake Corum to be duking it out for the lead back role in 2026? Regardless, it means Hunter is worth stashing.
Well, and does Sean McVay fancy himself as a new age Mike Shanahan? I can make this running back that I took in round 4, or in the case of Kyron Williams, what was he, a 7th round pick or later or something like that?
I thought
6th or 7th. So I think that's kind of the thought. Round 5. Okay. Man, that was crazy to think that he was a pretty highly touted prospect too, if I remember right, and then he ran a slow 40. And
that's literally and killed the draft capital.
Yeah, very similar to Audric Estime. A lot of those, two Notre Dame running backs, same story. I don't know what's going on there, but yeah, I love that call. And like I said, I think a lot of these offensive coaches, and we saw it again with Ben Johnson, whether they intended it to be that way or not, just taking stabs at late round running backs, even though Jarquez Hunter 4th round isn't super late. I'll throw out a tight end, and it's a tight end that I have liked throughout the process. I know John Lobb doesn't necessarily agree with me. The knock on him is he's kind of a tweener, but that's Oronde Gadsden II. I can't imagine a better landing spot than the Los Angeles Chargers in round 5. And he's got a decent, not great profile when you look it up, above average in speed and burst. He doesn't have the size, but he's not going to be used as, a primarily blocking tight end. Like, this is your classic Y receiving tight end, because he's not as big as some other guys. Although when you look it up on PFF, he's not a liability in the blocking game. He just isn't. And the PFF numbers are I think the tape's good, and I think the numbers on PFF match what I saw on tape. But I watched the tape first. He's number 13 amongst all college tight ends in PFF's offensive grade, number 16 in receiving grade. And like we said, the only tight ends on the roster currently are Will Dissly and Tyler Conklin. It might be somewhat of a long shot, but I think that there's a real chance that Oronde Gadsden can beat those guys out. And I think he's definitely worth stashing. And again, what I'm seeing right now in rookie drafts is him going in the somewhere in the fourth round. Sometimes he's sometimes he's undrafted. So definitely a guy. If you need a tight end, why not take a shot on Oronde Gadsden? Mr. Babbage, your thoughts?
Yeah, I really like that, especially. So I'm in a best ball dynasty league draft that's going on right now, and it's start two tight ends. So that's basically tight end premium, even though the scoring is the same. You have to fill out two in your starting spots. But the like Mason Taylor, Elijah Arroyo, Terrence Ferguson went like back to back to back, and then Harold Fannin I think went right after that. And so this is a run like at the end of the second round on all these tight ends, and Gadsden is looking like a fourth round pick in this league. So it seems like in the mind of drafters, there's a steep drop off from even the Arroyo Ferguson tier down to Fannin, and then even further down to Gadsden. But with only Tyler Conklin in front of him, there's a lot of opportunity there to be paired with a, I don't know if prolific talent may not be the right word, but a very talented quarterback in Justin Herbert. I
Yeah.
will.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, to say I'll also go with the pass catcher here. We're recording on Saturday morning, by the way. If you are wondering why maybe our flow is off a little bit, we're both. I don't know how long you've been up, but I've been up for about an hour now.
Yeah, the coffee hasn't quite kicked in. Although I thought my flow I feel strong, and I thought
I feel my flow is weak, so I shouldn't throw you
oh,
under the
okay.
bus by saying our flow. What I really
Yeah,
mean is
don't
my.
don't loop me into
You're
this. Although
firing. You're firing. I'm not.
I will say that I usually I'm a 2 to 3 cups of coffee guy, and this is number one. So who knows? Maybe I'm
Yeah, I
delusional
mean,
in
I'm in
thinking.
the middle of number one. I didn't even get number one finished, but I will stay on theme here again as you shifted to pass catchers. I will take another pass catcher here, receiver out of Maryland, Tai Felton, who went to Minnesota in round 3. Incredibly intriguing landing spot, right, Seth? Because you and I both loved his profile coming out of Maryland, and we talked to John Lobb. He loved his draft capital. I can't remember if we talked to Debro about it, but I feel like he got a cosign when we were on that
Yeah,
podcast.
he was in, but not
Not
to the
super
point
in.
where we
Yeah,
were, but he
right.
liked him. So
And then he gets third round draft capital over a lot of receivers that we really liked, like Alec Iamaner. And it goes to the Vikings, and everyone, it's crickets. It's crickets. And understandably so. It's an interesting situation to have to join. You have Justin Jefferson, you have TJ Hawkinson, you have Jordan Addison. But Felton does profile for their team as somebody who's going to start in 3 receiver sets. They were running Jalen Naylor out there last year. So it looks like he's going to get some playing time. His ceiling and target share are severely limited, at least from my point of view. But his draft capital has adjusted to that. And he's going, it's crazy because a third round wide receiver is in the mix of being drafted with Jarquez Hunter, Kyle Monangai, Woody Marks, all these guys that are later round draft picks, long shot. Felton could start in 3 receiver sets after summer minicamp if he beats out Jalen Naylor. So the capital is worth it. I tend to be kind of firing a little bit more towards the running backs in this area. But at a certain point, like when Tai Felton is, late 4th round, like it feels like a value just because, he profiles as a better outside guy than Addison. So if he can also take the top off of defenses, does he maybe overtake Addison a little bit? I don't know. This is the NFL. They drafted him for a reason. Anything is possible. So if he's cheap enough, stash him.
yeah, I've seen him consistently go in round 4. And what's really interesting, and somebody in our YouTube comments pointing this out, so shout out to the people commenting, and leave us a comment below. I will get back to it. I get back to all the YouTube comments. Jordan Addison is a unrestricted free agent after next year. So
Mm,
this could be
maybe they
a
trade him.
signal, a signal. Maybe they trade him. You know what smart organizations do? They get ahead of situations like this. And that's exactly what the Vikings are doing with Kevin O'Connell. I think taking a Tai Felton in round 3, at the back of round 3, a guy that I think is a capable starter in the NFL. I don't know if he's going to be a star, but I think, if who knows? I don't think you can pay Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison in this current wide receiver market. So that's just something to keep an eye on. And shout out to our YouTube comments for pointing that out. And I thought it was a really good point. So
It's a
again,
great
when we're
call.
when we're talking about stashes, that is absolutely something to look up. And it's just
100%
a
contract.
quick Google search, and you can find it, Spot Tracks or Spo Tracks, however you say that. I am going to, so now this is the part where I just went total sicko mode. I'm in some drafts where we go 5 rounds or a little bit, some even a little bit deeper, and I'm going to be accused of being stashing roster cloggers or whatever. And you might disagree with this, but I'm going to throw out Xavier Restrepo as a potential stash.
Yes.
He's not being drafted at all, like not even in deep formats, because he's a wide receiver and he went undrafted. But once upon a time, do you remember us talking about Xavier Restrepo before all the craziness with the 40-yard dash as a potential day 2 pick? I remember seeing NFL mock drafts early in the process, him going early round 2 to Tennessee. I think we did a rookie mock draft based on a mock draft where Xavier Restrepo went early round 2 to Tennessee. And we thought, oh, that'd be a good player for Cam Ward to have. He goes undrafted. The Titans did take 2 receivers ahead of him in Elijhah Manor and Chimere Dike, if I'm saying that right. Probably not. But the rest of
Yeah,
the
you did.
oh, thank God,
I think so,
somebody
at
will
least. That's
somebody
how I've heard it. So somebody
Chimere
will.
Dike. Uh, thank God I got that right. Somebody will let us know in the comments if I didn't. But the Titans wide receiver core, to me, is very uninspiring. You have Calvin Ridley there, who's the number 1, followed by Tyler Lockett and Van Jefferson. That according to our lads, and obviously you throw in the 2 rookies there, Elijah Manor and DK. And to me, it isn't crazy to think that Restrepo could find his way onto the field if things break his way, because this is a guy who's super productive in college, played a lot faster than his 40 time would suggest. I have no idea who told him to run at his pro day. I have no idea, but it was a terrible decision. And Restrepo, you watch the film, you go, man, I compared him to Ricky Pearsall. I thought he was this year's Ricky Pearsall. He ranked number 23 in PFF's receiving grade amongst all FBS wide receivers, and this was just a touch behind wide receivers like Emeka Egbuka and Jack Besh. I'm not saying he's as good as those guys, but there is not this massive difference between him and some of these wide receivers that were taken in round 2 and round 3.
Yeah, it's an interesting phenomena that happens when these guys, you're just so sure that they're gonna be, bulletproof from at the very least sliding like well beyond the 5th round, and one little speed test can make someone just go undrafted, and then he gets as an undrafted free agent. I don't know if you've, there's sayings that sometimes it's better to be an undrafted free agent than a 7th round pick,
Yes.
because you get to, kind of choose the situation that you go into. And that's the situation with Restrepo, where he is now paired with his college quarterback in essentially a battle for slot receiver snaps with Lockett and DK. So year 1, yeah, you're probably never gonna start him in a single game. I mean, NFL's crazy, you never know. But after these 1 year like veteran contracts wear out with Boyd and all these people, um, then he really has an opportunity to shine. But at the end of the day, he is an undrafted free agent. So, but hey, so is Jacoby Myers.
Yeah, no,
So it can happen.
he's exactly the kind of player that if I'm gonna stash a wide receiver, and I will correct you, I don't think Tyler Boyd's on the roster anymore.
Sorry,
But
I caught that. I meant to say Lockett because I was talking about him.
Lockett, yeah.
I meant to say Lockett because I was talking about him, and for some reason I just said Boyd. It's a
Here's
weird
the deal,
Freudian slip.
people. Here's the deal. Sometimes we misspeak. We say,
I'm
Titans
looking at
instead of
all these
Volunteers.
players in the show
I
sheet. I'm looking up contracts.
Yeah,
Like sometimes I saw Tyler Boyd when I was looking
yeah,
up contracts, and I was like, he's not on the Titans anymore. And I went to
yeah.
our lad. They pulled up their depth chart, and then for some reason I still said Boyd.
Yeah, so it's fine.
It
It's
happens.
you got to walk before you can crawl. Let's move on to your next stash, which we liked this player throughout the process. I know Debro really liked him when we talked to him, and I think the landing spot's really good. So tell us about Tahj Brooks.
Yeah, Tahj Brooks, 6th round to Cincinnati. So a great landing spot where he is paired against a starting running back in Chase Brown without a whole lot of draft capital behind him, right? He was a 5th round pick,
Sixth
6th round.
or Chase
No,
Brown or
Chase Brown, not Tahj Brooks.
I think fifth round. Yeah,
Okay, there we
fifth
go.
round.
So similar draft capital spent between Chase Brown and Tahj Brooks. And Brooks is like a bowling ball, but one that moves like really fast. This is 75th percentile speed, but 83rd percentile BMI is a really good combination because that you have the speed to be, a more, every down back, but you also have that strength to be able to power through and get goal line touches. And that's something he's going to be a little bit better at than Chase Brown. So that's edge number one. He also has, 62nd percentile college target share out of a school like Texas Tech. So he does have some receiving chops that helps even out the competition a little bit. And this is a situation where you got to ask yourself, do they really want to have Chase Brown be like the opportunity leader amongst NFL running backs? Because he was damn near on pace to be, like top 5 in total opportunities or something crazy like that once he got that full starter workload. And you have to imagine they go out and get a complimentary back like Tahj Brooks. I see an immediate role in the offense that could turn into a 1A 1B situation if Brooks, proves himself in the league.
Yeah, this was always a backfield to me that was going to be super interesting. And now you have Chase Brown, who, I mean, I think things fell really well for him. So I'm not trying to say that he's
Correct.
not going to be the starter, but really the only two players in the way of Tahj Brooks being the number 2 running back are Zach Moss and Samaje Perine. And you would think that the Bengals would have every interest or vested interest in Tahj Brooks seeing more of those snaps than those two guys. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I like that call quite a bit. My guy, and again, we're going sicko mode here. These are guys that you're not going to have to spend a draft pick on. Marcus Yarns, and this might be me being stubborn at this point. I don't know. But I really like the tape. And the Saints' backfield, all of a sudden, is very top heavy with Alvin Kamara leading the way. After that, your guess is as good as mine as to who earns RB2 reps. I suppose the favorite is Kendre Miller, but would it shock you if 6th-round pick Devin Neal, who's, by the way, I don't think he's on our list, plays? I wouldn't be shocked if Devin Neal plays more than Kendre Miller. Or what about CEH? He's probably going to get some time, maybe. I don't know. And then I don't know why they signed Bayless Jones, but it's the Saints. So they did it, and he's currently listed on their running back depth chart right now, according to our lads. And I suppose our lads could be wrong, but they're a pretty credible source. So, and by the way, just a quick aside, I remember somebody and I'm as plugged into the Bears as anybody, I feel. And I threw out on a podcast once. I was like, because people were talking about Velus Jones potentially earning wide receiver snaps for the Bears, and I just crushed that real quick by saying he's going to be taking running back snaps this week. And somebody in the comments was like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. And sure enough, I'm watching football on Sunday, and there's freaking Velus Jones lined up in the backfield multiple times. So just so you know, when it comes to the Bears, I know what I'm talking about. So your guess is as good as mine. I mean, Baelish or Marcus Yarns rather is way down the depth chart, but I think he's a talented player and he has a good athletic profile. He produced good, not great numbers at Delaware. And I want to shout out Ron Stewart, who posted this tweet. Marcus Yarns ranks among 25 drafted running backs as an undrafted free agent, third in receiving PPR per snap, tied for fourth in yards after contact, fifth in chunk rate, sixth in breakaway run rate. So when you're talking about running backs that have some juice, Marcus Yarns is one of those guys. And who knows what the Saints are thinking long term. I don't know if the Saints really think at all, to be honest, but I think they chose some pretty good running backs in Devin Neal and Marcus Yarns here. And like we said, Alvin Kamara ain't getting any younger. So it might not be this year, but what happens if Alvin Kamara gets hurt? Then it's a wild card, bitches. Who knows who they're going to throw out there?
Yeah, that's very true. So I mean, you got to be plotting. You got to pick somebody. It's a backfield. I think we've talked about this a lot before, where it doesn't matter kind of who you pick. Like follow your own process. But this is a backfield where you need, if you don't want any of Devin Neal, Kendre Miller, or Marcus Yarns at cost, which Yarns is literally free, then you're not doing Dynasty right. You might not have the roster room. You might not, have the opportunity to get all of those guys. That's one thing. But these are the backfields that you want to own other pieces of. Cincinnati's another example. Like we see, you have to read the tea leaves. Fifth round draft pick doesn't usually get bell cow volume year over year over year. Enter Tahj Brooks. Okay, you should be interested. Right. And so I agree with your process here. I would pick Neal over Yarns and Miller personally. But his draft capital is a little bit high for what I think his odds are on hitting that. So fair call there with Marcus Yarns. I will go a little bit, you're going sicko mode. I'm going a little bit safer, fourth, fifth round guys. Mostly because I believe, there's a lot of leagues out there that just aren't going to have the roster room to be rostering guys like Yarns, but we still should be keeping an eye out for them regardless. But I'll talk about Jordan James out of Oregon. Goes to San Francisco. And look, we know running backs is purely driven by opportunity, right? You get opportunity, you're going to score fantasy points, especially when you're a running back for Kyle Shanahan. And it's interesting that after taking Garendo and having him have multiple starts, they let Jordan Mason go. They bring in Jordan James in the fifth round. It doesn't seem like with this class, it didn't seem like the stamp of approval for Isaac Garendo or, Christian McCaffrey's long term. So until we see somebody, until I see, Christian McCaffrey get 3 years younger magically, until I see Garendo take over the keys to the offense, I'm gonna want a couple of stashes of Jordan James, because if we know anything about Kyle Shanahan running backs, somehow they are the most injury prone people in the league. And if you're behind McCaffrey and Garendo, you might get a chance to be a starter. So he's going pretty late in drafts, late enough to worth scooping up, on your dynasty team and throwing him in the taxi squad.
I love this call because I remember there's this other running back at Oregon in 2023 that was pretty good. His name was Bucky Irving. and this has been my point about Jordan James the whole time, even though I had to fight some people who were not as big of a fan. 759 rushing yards on just over 100 carries in 2023 with Bucky Irving on the roster at Oregon. And then this year, once he got the opportunity, 233 carries, over 1,200 rushing yards, 15 total touchdowns. And oh, by the way, 12 total touchdowns in 2023. So he produced even when he had significant competition. And now he winds up in San Francisco. And we're going to talk about another running back later in the show. Like, I'm going full sicko mode that I think is worth stashing as well in deeper formats. But it never hurts to have a running back in a Kyle Shanahan system, especially when you look at the depth chart. I get it. We have Christian McCaffrey there. He's going to be the starter if he's healthy, but there's no guarantee he stays healthy for the entire season. Outside of that, this is another wild card backfield. I mean, do you trust Isaac Guerendo to be the guy? I don't. I personally don't. Jordan, and then behind him, it's Jordan James, and it's Patrick Taylor, and it's Israel Abanikanda. So I think Jordan James is the clear RB3. And like we said, injuries happen. I don't know if I trust Guerendo, so I love that call by you. I'll talk about another quote unquote roster clogger, but this is a player. There were few landing spots where I would actually care about this guy, even though I really liked him because Debro brought him to our attention, brought this guy to our attention, and that's Elijhah Badger. He winds up with the Chiefs, man, and the Chiefs did, and it could be nothing, right? It could be absolutely nothing. But when you look at their wide receiver depth chart, they have Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, who's on a 1-year deal, and Rashee Rice, who knows if he's going to be facing a suspension. I've read something that Drew Davenport doesn't think he's going to be suspended this year even, so we'll see. But outside of those three guys, Sky Moore, Juju Smith-Schuster, they drafted Jalen Royals, and then it's a lot of really nothing. I mean, Tyquan Thornton, Justin Ross, Nico Remigio, who returned punts for them last year. But Elijhah Badger can do that. And I think Elijhah Badger has a lot of juice. And they took two receivers in Jalen Royals and Elijhah Badger that they could be, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, they could be borderline stars or they could be complete duds. Like there's so much upside with these two guys. Like just look at the athletic profile of both players. Especially Jalen Royals. I was just talking about Jalen Royals last night with a Chiefs fan and how excited I was that the Chiefs were where he landed. Now, obviously, he has some players in the way, but like Elijhah Badger, 6'1", 200 pounds, 4'4", like it's not complicated to figure out what the Chiefs are interested in. They're looking for explosive playmakers that can move the needle for them. So, and right. Elijhah Badger fits that mold. And he was very versatile in college. Like Debro said it here on the channel. At Arizona State, it was a lot of run after the catch stuff. And then at Florida, it was a lot of stretch the field stuff. So it's going to be interesting to see, like, if he makes the team. That's check number one. If he makes the team, giddy up. Like it could be like who knows what could happen, because the range of outcomes are all over the place. Likely it's nothing, but I at least want to sprinkle at the back end of my rosters just in case he's a hit, because he could be a hit.
Yeah there's a lot of upside there, and there's very little cost, especially associated with Elijhah Badger as opposed to the Jalen Royals. But I'll be quick with this last one. I think we got our last two here. And, Raheim Sanders, Rocket Sanders. I think this is more of just another sensical play of, you do have a Marion Hampton who is awesome. But you have Najee Harris on a 1-year deal. The odds of that getting re-signed are probably pretty low unless he proves to be a significant factor. And if Raheim Sanders, proves himself as an undrafted free agent, he could be the backup to a Marion Hampton going forward. And at very minimum, he could be a handcuff, which is valuable, especially in Dynasty with bigger rosters too.
Yeah, I like that call. That's a good one. I think I forced you to talk about that.
You did, but I agree with it. So
Yeah. Um, yeah, so he was number 22 in PFF's rushing grade amongst all FBS running backs in 2024. That was 5 spots below Caleb Johnson, and he was ahead of guys like Woody Marks, Tahj Brooks, DJ Giddens. So I think, yeah, and you look at the depth chart outside of Najee Harris and Omarion Hampton, Hassan Haskins and Kamani Vidal. It's not crazy to think he's the RB3 right off the bat.
right.
So I hope you guys stayed to this point in the episode. And if you did, thank you. And don't forget to click the like button and subscribe to the channel because I saved what could possibly be the best stash that we've talked about so far. The best stash, the sicko, deep leagues, it doesn't matter. He's going to be available in probably 99% of leagues. And that would be Corey Kiner. This is the other San Francisco running back that I mentioned. And when I was doing the research on him, I was kind of blown away. The profile's decent, but the college production was really good at Cincinnati. When you look at what he was able to do and the size, like 5'10", like good size, 5'10", 210-ish. And then he started at LSU, transferred to Cincinnati, back-to-back seasons, over 1,000 rushing yards. Not a great pass catcher, or at least he didn't do it in college. But when you look at the film, good. Okay, what does PFF have to say? Number 10 amongst all FBS running backs in 2024 in PFF's rushing grade. Number 2 amongst all FBS running backs and actually I think it was number 3 if you include all FBS running backs, but he was tied with Cam Scatabo. 82 missed tackles forced. And yards after contact per attempt, 4.12, number 19 amongst all FBS running backs in 2024. So situation, okay, he might be buried, but there's at least some uncertainty like we've talked about with Christian McCaffrey. Who knows if Isaac Guerrero is going to be the legitimate number 2 running back, and then it's anybody's guess after that. Jordan James, probably. Patrick Taylor, probably not. Israel Benikanda, and then Corey Kiner's in that mix too. And I'll just say this. I want running backs in that Kyle Shanahan scheme. And Corey Kiner, you just never know. So I'm stashing him in deep formats.
Yeah,
only.
I mean, deep formats.
That's, I mean, those numbers are impressive. No, I mean,
They're impressive, but
yeah.
I mean, I'm just going to project a headline here. Corey Kiner released from 49ers, signs with practice squad at some point this offseason. Like, I don't know. It is a stash. I certainly wouldn't stash him over anyone else in this list.
Fair enough. All right, that is Matt Babich. You can follow Matt Babich _Matt10 on Twitter. You can follow me at Seth _DIEWOLD on Twitter. Let us know who you're stashing in the comments. Again, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe to the channel. Mr. Babich, any final words of wisdom for the people before we get out of here?
Again, I'll just reiterate maybe the biggest point of the show is when we find stashes first by looking at where the opportunities are likely to come from. Fragile backfields, potentially Kansas City, Houston, Los Angeles. You look at contracts. So that's how you find the stashes. It's not necessarily about the player. It's more about the situation and how that could unfold for players in positions like Woody Marks, Jarquez Hunter, etc.
Nobody cares about Aaron Rodgers. Have a great day. You're absolutely right. Good words of wisdom there, Mr. Babich. And we will see you later. Bye-bye, everybody.